Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm Rayanna Starr, your hostess of the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor podcast. And I have with me Meeta Patel. I don't know how many of you follow me, every week, but I interviewed her husband a couple months back, right, Meeta?
Yep.
And we just BJ,
Sanjay.
Sanjay.
Yep.
And when I was interviewing him, it became apparent that I really needed to interview you too, because he just credits your success in real estate investing. Here he is, he's coming with with you. And so I love that he's joining us and Dale's joining us, and there'll be people joining us live on Facebook. So Sanjay, feel free to be part of this conversation and come on camera if you like. But I just want to welcome you, Meeta, because Sanjay, like I said, he's a happy wife, happy life, smart guy, because he really gives you a lot of the credit. So let's just dive right in, Meeta, and talk a little bit. First off, your name. Names have a meaning, and I love Meeta. What does
Yes.
Meeta mean?
It means friend.
Friend. And Sanjay, is that a good name for her?
That's an outstanding name for her. She the friends that she has, she's very, very loyal to. So she is a very good friend. She's my best friend, first of all. So
Aw, love it. Okay, cool. So, Meeta, why don't we start with, you have a background in accounting as a CPA, and then you took some time off to have the kids. So let's go back to Meeta pre-real estate and tell me a little bit about that history.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you for having me on.
Oh,
And
my
Sanjay,
pleasure.
thanks for all the credit that you give me. I don't know if it's well deserved, but anyway, thank you. But yeah, so basically, I grew up kind of like in a typical Indian family where, education was huge because it's always like go to college, get a good job, et cetera, right? Living the American dream. Came here from South Africa when I was young, probably about 7 years old. And so I went to college, got a degree in accounting, worked as a CPA for about 10 years. And then basically we had our kids, and I decided that I didn't want to put them in daycare. I wanted to like be part of, their growing up years and be more active in like whatever they were part of, PTA, school board advisory, et cetera, et cetera. So I did that for a while. And then like once they got to middle school, high school, I was like, okay, now it's time for me to kind of do something else. So I was looking for things, and I opened a franchise for a couple of years. And so I ran that for a couple of years. Didn't quite meet my expectations. And also, it was about 3 hours away from our house. And initially, the thought process was I'll be down there for about like 6 months, 8 months, get it up and running, get a good manager in place, and then I can kind of go back and forth from home to there. And that just didn't work out. And so I was away from my family for probably about a year and a half or so. Um, it wasn't an ideal situation for my family. So it's like, okay, now I have to like shut that down and like, okay, what else can I do? So for about a year and a half after that, I kind of like took some time, was kind of like licking my wounds, I think, a little bit, because things didn't go as planned. But then it's like, okay, I need to get back up. And so around that time, also, I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then also was hearing ads on like fix and flips and stuff like that. So I went to like a seminar about fix and flips. And essentially that's how I was introduced to fix and flips. I went to a seminar that led to like more training and, joining a program. So I did fix and flips for probably a few years. And at that point, we're like, okay, fix and flips is good to get money, but then like it's not long term, right? You fix a property, you sell it, and then you move on to another one. So then the long-term strategy was like, okay, let's buy single family houses, rent those and start building that portfolio. But then like everybody I kept talking to was like, well, instead of doing that, if you're going to do that anyway, go jump to multifamily. So that's kind of how we got into multifamily. So we've been doing multifamily probably for about 2-3 years. And then also before that, we were investing passively in some multifamily and also some shopping centers. But then actively, we've been doing it for about a few years. Yeah.
You were investing in syndications.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, were you guys Fortune Builder students?
Yes, we were.
Okay. Did you
Yep.
invest in some of their syndications?
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
So we did invest in some of their shopping centers.
Yeah. How has that been?
It's been good. So the one thing that I did like about investing in shopping centers that's different from multifamily is that with shopping centers, what they have done, a strategy that they've used is the parcels, they would sell those off. And so when they sell off an out parcel, they start returning some capital to the investors. So I feel like you're if that's their strategy, you're more likely to get capital back before like the 5-year hold. So there are a couple of investments that we're in where we've gotten all our capital back and now we're getting infinite returns on those.
Okay. So that's
So
nice.
that's kind of, yeah, that's a little bit different.
It's nice to get your capital back and you keep getting your interest payments.
Yeah.
That's something nice about syndication. So talk a little bit about like the journey from fix and flips, that mindset shift to, okay, let's start investing in single family, and then the mindset shift to go, oh, well, let's go into multifamily, because those are 3 different focuses, aren't they?
They are very different, and it's definitely been a journey, right? Because like it's when you learn something and then you realize there's a next level to it, then you get to the next level and you're like, wait, there's something more that is out there. And so that's kind of what it was, where like fix and flips are, it's almost a job, right? Because
A lot
you
of
have
work
to,
and a lot of risk. It's
exactly, you have to be very
it's the
active.
sexy part of the business, but it's there. People don't realize there's so many ways to make money in real estate investing, and that's the most difficult way, and the
Right.
most time consuming and the highest risk, right?
Exactly.
But
And
it's fun when you get it down and you know how to do it and you see that transformation, because it is really fun to see the fruits of your labor. But you're not going to get
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always fun to see the finished project, right? So that was good, but we were looking for something that was more that's going to take us further. And with fix and flips, obviously, it's like you're only as good as the next flip that you find. So
how long were you guys investing and in real estate before you bought your first rental? Your first thing?
probably about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long, how many single family residences did you guys buy before you realized, oh, multifamily's the way to go?
We only actually bought one.
Oh, so that was a quick learning curve, wasn't it?
Yes, and we still have that one, and we keep thinking, okay, should we sell it and like put the proceeds into a multifamily? But I'm still holding on to that one. But yeah, it was just one of those things. Like if you have a single family and there's nobody there, you have 100% vacancy, right? Whereas like if you have multifamily, one tenant leaves, you still have some revenue coming in.
Right.
And also like economies of scale with everything, right? If you have to replace a roof for a single family versus a multifamily,
Right.
and just all of that stuff. So yeah.
You guys have a particular market you're in and a particular size of multifamily that you found is your niche?
So we don't have a particular market. We just basically try to find partners in different markets, and they kind of come to us and say, hey, you want to be a part of that deal? And then we can be a part of that deal depending on if it works for us. So yeah, we're not really tied to a market. I know like some people say, really know your market. But where we are, we're in Northern Virginia, and this market is just not very good for real estate investors. It just, the
So
numbers don't
you
make
guys
sense.
joint venture pretty much on all your multifamily investments.
We've done syndications. Yeah.
They're all syndications.
Yeah, we have a couple that we've done syndications with, and then we've done some passive investing as well. But yeah.
So you're either you're lending into a syndication project, or you're a limited partner. Are you guys doing any GP
Yeah, so we have two that we're GPs in.
that you're the ones managing the syndication?
Yeah.
Discuss the difference for less savvy investors. Talk about a syndication, talk about what it is, and talk about the different levels and involvement in syndication.
Yeah, so syndication basically has like limited partners and general partners. So the general partners are the people who find the deal. They get the loan structure together, and so they're going to kind of also be managing the property. And the LPs, the limited partners, basically come in with capital. So for instance, if it's $1 million property, you're going to go get a bank financing. So say the bank finances 750. So now you have to come up with the 250,000. So the limited partners basically bring the capital. They're passive in their investment. So all they're doing is they're bringing their money in. The general partners are the ones that are managing the day-to-day operations.
And so the limited partners, it truly is passive because their money's making money for them. That's it. The general partners, it isn't really passive because there's work you're doing, but it is recurring revenue. Now, in the ones that you're the general partner, talk about accredited investors and what those are, and who can invest in your syndication.
Yeah, so for a syndication, you have a 506B or a 506C. So some syndications are 506C, which is just accredited investors. So basically, to be an accredited investor, you have to have either $200,000 annual salary if you're single, $300,000 if you're married, and then either that or you have to have $1 million in net worth that excludes your house. So that's kind of an accredited investor, and that's SEC guidelines. And essentially they're like, if somebody has that, they feel like they're savvy enough to be investing in commercial
And then
real
what's
estate
the
or whatever.
minimum investment requirement?
It depends on the syndication. Most of them are between 50 and 100,000.
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, the average is 100K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the smaller ones, it may be 50, but yeah, so
Okay.
that's kind of the general range, is the 50 to
So
100,000.
talk about your preference, the difference between what it's like for you guys, because your GP's on two, right?
Yeah.
And then your limited partners on others. Talk about the difference from your own experience, like which do you like better, or do you like them the same but for different reasons? So talk about like your experience, the day-to-day, the operational aspects of it.
Yeah. So I will say, as far as for the general partner, Sanjay has kind of been taking the lead on that. So he's kind of more into the day-to-day and all that stuff. So they have like property management meetings, and then they have general partner meetings, etc. So he's doing more of that active side right now. And there's pros and cons to both, right? So it's kind of, you want to be in both. With the general partners, you have more control. With the passive, you don't have any control over what the general partners are doing. Basically, every quarter or every month, depending on how the syndication is set up, you get a check, and that's about it. for a limited partner. Whereas with a general partner, you're the decision maker. So you like, okay, do we want to do a CapEx, or how extensive a CapEx do you want to do? So you're more involved in it. You're more involved with the property manager, etc. So it's definitely more hands-on to do the general partner versus limited partner. But it both sides, I mean, I feel like
They both have their pros and cons. Limited partners, it's truly passive, but they don't have any control or say, but they don't have any responsibility or work to do. General
correct.
partners have control and they have a say, but there's work to be done. So Sanjay, since you're doing more of the GP stuff and I know you enjoy it, talk a little bit about that.
So for active, there's a few different components to being a general partner. It, as Meeta said, there's the asset management piece where what you're looking at is the property itself. How do you want to manage the property? Usually you'll engage a property, since we're remote, we have a property manager for the properties. So we have weekly meetings that, and then I also go out quarterly to meet with the property managers, and sometimes more often depending on how things are going. But just to make sure that the property itself is running smooth. And then on the other side, because we have a number of investors, we have all our LP investors, our limited partners. Another component of being a general partner is investor relations. You want to make sure that you are communicating with your limited partners well enough. They know what's going on, so they have confidence in what you're doing as well. Because you want your limited partners to be partners with you on more than one syndication. If they have a bad experience, they feel like you're not communicating with them, or if you're doing a bad job or something like that, they're not going to want to invest with you again. So that's also a part of being a good general partner, is making sure that
is so key. Like when I'm telling people that are having issues, say with a rehab or just in general in their life, the rule of thumb is when you have debt and you have creditors, don't ghost them. Communicate.
Right.
Communicate, because people will work with you, organizations will work with you, funds will work with you, lenders will work with you if you're transparent and communicate. And I think that is the key in this business. If I were to distill this business down to one simple thing, it's conversations, it's communication.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that I figured out as being a limited partner first, is because we were limited partners on a number of different deals. I got to see how different general partners interacted as well as managed their properties. And that was one of the things, and I think that was really good experience for being on the other side at that point. I got to see some good ones and I got to see some bad ones, unfortunately. And the good ones, even if there's something going on with the property. We had one property that we're passively invested in, had a fire that destroyed one of the buildings, essentially. The general partner was very upfront with us. They came in, they told us exactly what was going on, how they were going to deal with the situation and how they were moving forward, and how in the end it's probably going to end up benefiting us in investment wise. And thankfully nobody got hurt in the fire as well, but because they're going to be able to renovate the entire building with insurance proceeds, and part of rebuilding that, there's some empty land that they're probably going to be able to put more units on, which is going to add to the bottom line. So in the end, it's going to work out, even though they had to stop distributions for a while, obviously, because fewer units. Yeah. But the fact that they were upfront with us, they showed us the journey that they were going through and telling us, step by step how they were dealing with the issue. That helped us have more confidence, and that's a general partner I'd be more than happy to invest with again, right? Or potentially be another, be a co-general partner with on a deal. So,
Thanks, son. Yeah,
so.
thank you. I appreciate it. And Meeta, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you as a real estate investor? And maybe there's more than one, like maybe the challenge in the beginning was just finally getting your first deal and working through fix and flips and figuring that out. And then maybe the next challenge was something to do with investments. So, but before you answer that question, other than owning that single family, is all your other investments syndications?
We also have a short-term rental. So I have a short-term rental that with a partner. So we're doing that as well. So yeah, the single family, multifamily, short-term rental. So that's kind of what we're involved in.
But the majority of your multifamily are
It's multifamily, yes.
So this is what I love about this business is like there's very low risk. Now, this is syndications are for people who have capital.
Correct.
You have to have capital and you truly want to park it somewhere and truly have passive income. There was a gentleman, and I forget who it was, which is terrible because I'd like to give him credit, but a month or two back, we had this conversation about what's truly passive income and what's recurring income. And most of us think what's passive rental income is actually recurring income because it still requires us to be involved in some way and do something. Even with a property management company, you're still, whereas the truly purest form of passive income is when your money is making money for you. And
Right.
so what I love what you guys have done is you didn't struggle for years. You did some fix and flips. You figured out quickly, this is exhausting. Yeah, it's fun, but this isn't going to get us where we want to go. All right, let's get a single family. Oh, wait a minute. Multifamily. And why should we struggle to hunt for them? Let's just do syndications. I love that because that's truly passive income. So, but you had to have had some capital to get into them. So talk about ways you guys did that, like giving people ideas on if people really wanted to do this. A lot of times people do fix and flips and wholesales because they don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around in a retirement account or a savings account. They have to build up some capital. So talk a little bit about that, Meeta, like how to get your foot in the door, how to develop capital to be able to take advantage of these more passive incomes sources like syndications.
Yeah, well, for us, like before we got into this real estate, we didn't realize like the 401ks and the IRAs that we could self-direct. So that's kind of how we really honestly got into the syndications where we're LPs is we self-directed our IRAs and 401ks and we're able to do that. But as far as like people not having capital, there's always different ways to get in. So if you don't have the capital to invest passively, then you can start actively where like you could find the property, find a team that can put together a syndication. And now you have an asset management fee that you got off of it. And you can roll that over into that investment. And so now you're both on the LP side and on the GP side. So that's kind of a way, if you want to, where like you provide that value, where you bring the deal in, and then you can use your asset management. I mean, not the asset management fee, sorry, the acquisition fee to roll over into a passive investment in that same syndication.
Okay. And if let's just say someone is just starting out, they don't have a pot to piss in, and you guys were to take them under your wing, what advice would you give them to like get started? If you guys had to start all over again, would you do everything the way you did it already? Or
Absolutely not.
okay, what would you do differently if you were knowing what you know now and assuming you don't have a lot of capital, what would you do differently if you were starting out again?
I think the one very hard lesson that we've had through our journey is trusting the right people. We've trusted the wrong people along our journey, and it obviously has burned us. So I think the first thing is finding somebody that you trust, somebody who is going to be able to mentor you and, provide them with whatever talents that you have. So it could be something where it's something that you can do to take something off of their plate, right? Whatever that case may be, calling brokers or just provide value and provide something what's their pain point. And I think that kind of goes a long way. But yeah, the main thing is finding people you trust. And I think that's kind of been a tough journey for us.
I think there isn't anyone in this business who hasn't had some story about a contractor or a lender or a joint venture partner or a seller or a buyer or, hasn't had some issue. And so if you had to do it all over again, how would you vet people now? Knowing what you know now, how would you determine if someone's trustworthy?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the whole trust but verify thing, right? So like some people they talk a good talk, but now it's like, okay, now we go a layer deeper. And I know Sanjay's been doing this recently as well. It's like, okay, so now we have a contact, but then we go find people who have done work with them before. And so now we're like getting other people's opinions on what their experience has been with this person. Whereas before it was like, okay, we kind of like, okay, we thought that we could trust them. But now we actually go a step further and find other people who have experience with them to see what their experience was, good, bad, whatever.
And I have a general partner that on my last deal, he does a background check on anybody that he's going to partner with.
I
And
think both of you have said two really important things. Background check, and you don't have to feel bad about that. It's just learning from experiences and also through the network. Okay. There was, Fortune Builders. We were all part of Fortune Builders. And, real estate investing is it's a small, large community,
Yes,
right?
it is.
And especially when you invest in a program like Fortune Builders or Renatus or Sub2 or whatever, any of those trainers out there, because word gets around. And I remember there being, my VA keeps interacting with me and it's distracting. I remember there being some rock stars that, you would see a lot about in the Facebook group and stuff. And then I'd be coaching people that had lent them money, some of these people. And and it happened more than once. There were a handful of people that I knew who had loaned money to these people and they were being unethical. They weren't paying their lenders back and they were, just really burning a lot of bridges. And I remember going to, the powers that be in that community and saying, hey, and them not really doing anything about it. And that concerned me, considering that one of the values was being ethical. And this is an industry where it is important who you know, and it is important to ask around. I saw a post that was very bold the other day of someone blatantly out there, not holding back, naming names of someone that had, and I was like, good for you, because
Right.
I'm bold enough to do that. But a
Yeah.
lot of people are afraid of offending or upsetting, and I'm like, well, it's kind of like, not that this is a good analogy when a woman gets raped and she doesn't want to testify, but it's like, yeah, you're going to be traumatized going through that, but if you don't, someone else is going to have to go through that same experience. It's that same kind of thing that we have a moral obligation to look out for each other and point out who the bad eggs are.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you guys bringing this up. Anything else you want to say about any of that?
Yeah, and just kind of going along the same lines, right? Like sometimes you look up to some of the people in these programs and you're like, okay, well, if they're at this level, then they must be trustworthy. And we've realized that, sometimes it's all smoke and mirrors, right? Like they can present themselves really well, but then really act unethically. So going along the same thing that you said, we've had that experience. So yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is we've learned not to just trust what some folks say. We've done some of our own research on essentially how to set up deals, and we're part of another group that does that talks about finance and how to set up your finances, and that actually saved us from getting into a bad deal because we went through, looked at the deal that this other person was showing us, and it's like, yeah, that no, it's like we're taking all the risk and you're taking all the profit. That's not gonna, I'm sorry.
It's
And,
amazing how some people think that.
yeah, and that saved us from we ended up having a bad experience with one investor, and we almost got deeper in with them, and this saved us from doing that. So
Yeah.
it's the be you have the power to say no. Just because someone comes to you with a deal that they say is a great deal doesn't mean it's a great deal. um so
Yeah, that's
yeah.
why I think it's really important, and why on Fridays, Mondays and Fridays, Mondays I do a tip of the week. Fridays we've changed it to a Fun Friday campfire discussion, but I always focus on practical skills, researching market. How do you analyze a deal? La-di-da, because fundamentally you're lazy in this business if you're waiting for other people to bring you deals and trusting them.
Mhm.
You've got to have the fundamental deal analyzing skill set,
Yeah.
and know the difference between analyzing a fix and flip versus a rental versus a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. You really have to, and I'm not a big numbers person, but you have to have the basics down of knowing what to look for. You also have to be able to, if you're doing virtual wholesaling, Jamil Damji will call it astro flipping, basically where you're just starting out wholesaling and you're not walking through properties and driving through neighborhoods and going through properties with a repair estimator and knowing what, fascia or soffit or what to look for in electrical or plumbing or all the mechanical systems, and you're not able to spot termites or whatever, then you are very vulnerable to just believing what someone else says and what they're promising. And everyone has different criteria and risk levels. Some people, they're building in a 10% contingency. Others, that's not enough. Some people are going completely on a certain percentage of ROI, and others are looking for what's the actual amount I'm going to profit. What they don't realize is all those numbers matter. You've got to be able to factor all of those things in, and analyzing a deal that's a short-term rental versus a fix and flip, there's a big difference in the way you
Mhm.
analyze. And So you're very vulnerable in this business if you're not willing to put in the reps and practice it to master it. So a lot of people I coach, we coach on setting them up on a wholesale system first, because you learn the fundamentals of the business by doing that. You have to get good at looking for properties and analyzing them and negotiating offers and, finding the deals, finding buyers, building relationships with other, investors and buyers and sellers and realtors. So, there's a lot of entry points into this business. There's a lot of ways to make money, but don't rest on your laurels. Even if you have capital to invest as a limited partner in a syndication deal, do your homework, do your research, know who you're investing with, know how to analyze that deal to be able to tell if it's a good investment. Anything you guys want to say about that? I'm jumping off my soapbox now.
I totally agree with you. In fact, my partners and I actually did a webinar on how to vet a sponsor team for a multifamily, because as you said, in multifamily and syndications, the basis is underwriting and underwriting properties and understanding how all the numbers fit together. You may not be a numbers person. Meeta was a CPA. She's a great underwriter. Not everybody has to have the skill she does that in underwriting, but as long as you understand how the numbers work together, and by tweaking one, how it affects other parts of it, you can understand whether what someone's trying to do when they present their underwriting to you, right? Because whenever someone presents you a deal that they want you to invest in, they're going to put it in the best light possible. You have to understand how, well, yeah, they're counting 95% occupancy, they're doing this and that. What are the parameters that might make this a bad deal, and how possible is that? So, have they actually stress test the deal and things like that. And part of the other that we were talking about vetting people. One of the great things, I'm also part of another group for multifamily, and it's a national group. So the great part about that is I was able to join a network of people all over the country. So that's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable going in different markets, because I have experts in those markets that I can talk to, and I know whether I can trust them. I've seen the deals they've done and things like that. So it takes time to build that network as well. So it's probably good when you're first starting out to concentrate on one market, because you don't have the breadth of a network to be able to go everywhere, but you can at least figure out one market and figure out how that market ticks. Because fix and flips in North Carolina are going to be totally different from fix and flips in New Jersey or in DC. You're going to look for different things, and it's the same with multifamily. There's certain places
Well, not to mention, oh God, I mean, that's a great example, because the processes, the permitting, the authorities are different. Like I have a client, they had a rental, a single family rental in LA, and they wanted to add an ADU. And it was like a year just trying to get a permit for that. It's ridiculous. Whereas in Asheville, I'm in North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the western part of the state. Dealing with the county versus dealing with the city, they're two very different entities. And the city is all about let's build. We have a housing shortage. The county, like I have a friend who bought a place. He wanted to do a small tiny house village on it. And every time he just kept doing the due diligence on the infrastructure to just develop the septic, the roads, the utilities. And finally, the storm drain runoff just like killed the deal for him. It was just so ridiculous. The space it was going to gobble up, the regulations, the hoops, how long it was going to take. It was so frustrating. But also, you have states where the taxes are real high, the permitting process is difficult. They nickel dime you. It's almost like they don't want you to be developing or improving properties,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Meeta has some horror stories about flipping in DC. So
Yeah.
Just the permitting process is ridiculous, like you said. I mean, it just depends on where you are. Some jurisdictions are like, hey, we want you to come and fix up these properties, and some jurisdictions are just like,
Yeah, and that can kill you, because if you close on the contract and you're sitting there, those holding costs can kill you and you can't do anything. You're sitting on a property that is not making you any money. It's costing you, and you're waiting to do something with it. That's so frustrating.
yep. And then especially when you have hard money lending, like you've got a hard money lender, and you're paying that interest every month. And so yeah, definitely a lot of stories. Yeah.
So if you were to jump up on a rooftop, Meeta and Sanjay, but Meeta, and you could really get through to people, like you had a captive audience that was hanging on your every word, and you could give them advice that would make a difference and they would actually use that advice, what would it be?
I think for me is get educated. You don't have to know every single in and out, but get educated, right? Like you said, even though you have to trust somebody, you still need to have the basics down. And I think that's the main thing, is like, have the basics down. You don't have to be an expert, because you're not going to do the day-to-day for syndication, but have the basics down so that you're looking at, for instance, say management fee, and they have 2%. You're like, wait a minute, for this type of property, you should have a management fee of maybe 5% or whatever the case may be. So things like that, where you can just look at a deal analyzer that somebody's presenting to you, and you're like, wait a minute, these numbers are just off. You don't have to know it down to the penny or whatever, but you need to know that, hey, it just looks
You need to know enough. Yeah.
correct. So that's my main thing, is just educate yourself.
Sanjay, do you want to add anything? Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that getting educated is great. The other part is, and this is moving away. This is just in general. Learn how to set up your finances properly, internal, because part of the journey that we've had over the past 5-6 years is totally different from the way that that we were originally taught, right? You save up your nest egg and hope that it's enough for you and once you retire. But being able to set it up so that you have multiple passive income streams coming in, and also just learning different financial concepts that we've been able to do. Especially the biggest thing, and I know Meeta's the one that brought this to us, is learn how to be your own bank. And because the bank, who makes money on every single transaction? The bank does. Figure out how you can set yourself up as a bank and how to operate as a bank, and then any transaction you make in or out, you're making money on. So,
Yeah, and we could have a whole nother meeting just on that, the ways to be your own bank and the kinds of accounts to set up to be able to do that. Yeah, so maybe I'll have a panel on that and have a discussion on that on a Friday, where we just have a discussion panel on different ways to fund deals. Yeah. Thank you both so much for Sanjay. I think it's awesome that you've supported your wife and even suggested she come in and speak too. I love it. I think partnerships, it's a lot easier to do this business with a partner that you trust than trying to do it by yourself. So I think that's great. You guys have each other and that you're building a legacy for your kids. Do your kids show any interest in real estate?
Not right now, but I will say that it was kind of funny. My youngest son is in college right now, and he's renting a townhouse. So one day he came to me and he's like, "Yeah, my roommates and I decided that when we graduate, we're going to buy this townhouse and then rent it to college students." So it's like, okay, at least he's like thinking about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of discussions and we're very open with them as far as finances and stuff like that, which I think is missing in a lot of families where, you don't talk about finances, but we have open discussions about finances, what we're learning. And again, like Sanjay said, what we knew 5 years, 7 years ago is very different from our understanding of finances now, because we continually educate ourselves and continually grow. And so just like some of the norms that people tell you to do, like invest in the 401k, do this, and this, and like now we question things a lot more. It's like, is that really how we want to go? Do we want to put our money where we can't have access to it until we're 59 and a half, right? So different things like that. But anything that we're learning, we're kind of like talking to our kids about as well.
Good for you. All right. Well, any other things you guys want to say or mention before we wrap up? I really appreciate your time and you sharing your experience with us today.
Yeah, so I guess just continue learning, growing, and continue questioning. Find the next step, the next level. There's always more to learn. So yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to meet you, Meeta.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody, go out there and take action. Learn something new. No excuses. Go get some results. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.